The hall was lit with 100 golden flames, their reflections trembling in silver goblets brimming with red wine. Music floated through the air, a melody of triumph, love, and deceit. The courtiers laughed, their jewels shimmering like fireflies, unaware that with every sip they drew closer to death. By dawn, half the table lay cold. Their lips blackened, their eyes glazed, their souls claimed not by the sword, but by a silent poison slipped beneath the perfume of celebration. This was no random tragedy. It was an art, the dark craft of the Italian Renaissance elite, who understood that death could be delivered not in battle, but in the sweetness of wine. And behind every poisoned banquet, there was always a name whispered in dread: Borgia, Medici, Sforzas. Families whose feasts turned into funerals. Welcome to the poisoned banquets of Renaissance Italy, where celebration turned to massacre. Before we descend into this haunting tale of ambition, betrayal, and slow death served on golden plates, remember to like this video, subscribe, and follow for more real events of the past. Stories where power feasted and history wept. In the late autumn of 1494, the air over Rome was heavy with the scent of decay and roses. Within the walls of the Vatican Palace, however, everything glittered. Silk draperies cascaded down marble pillars. The chandeliers blazed with hundreds of candles, and the banquet tables stretched endlessly. Silver trays of roasted pheasant, sugared fruits, and golden wine gleaming under the trembling light. It was a feast not of faith, but of power. At the head of the table sat Rodrigo Borgia, now Pope Alexander VI, a man both adored and feared. His smile was soft, his words smooth, yet his eyes carried the weight of something far colder. The guests laughed at his jokes, toasted his reign, and whispered their loyalty. But beneath the music and the laughter, suspicion lingered like smoke. For in this Rome, alliances were fragile, and wine often tasted sweeter before it killed. Among those gathered was Cardinal Orsini, his ruby robes gleaming, his heart beating fast. He had heard the rumors that the Borgias' rise was not paved by faith alone. That poison, candelilla, was their unspoken weapon. A pale powder mixed with sugar and wine, tasteless, merciless, leaving its victims pale and stiff before dawn. Yet who could refuse a papal invitation? Decline, and you were branded an enemy. Attend, and you gamble with your life. When the first toast was raised, the room glowed like a furnace of gold. Rodrigo lifted his cup, a chalice studded with emeralds, and smiled. To unity, he said, his voice low and honeyed. The guests followed, their cups trembling slightly, though none dared to show fear. As the wine flowed, so did the laughter. Yet somewhere at the far end of the table, a young servant's hand shook as he poured a second round. His gaze met the Pope's briefly, and in that fleeting glance lay a command silent but clear. Hours later, when the music died and the candles burned low, when the guest slumped forward, his face pressed into a silver platter, the hall fell silent. The dancers froze. Rodrigo's smile did not falter. "A pity," he murmured, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. The man should have eaten less. Outside, the wind howled against the Vatican walls, carrying the scent of wine and death into the Roman night. Within those walls, the age of poison banquets had begun, and Rome, drunk on beauty and blood, would never taste purity again. Dawn broke over Rome in a haze of pale gold, but inside the Vatican, the corridors felt colder than stone. The news had already spread. Cardinal Orsini was dead. His servants swore he had merely stumbled after the feast, clutching his throat before collapsing. The physicians, summoned in haste, called it apoplexy, but no one believed them. The whispers began almost before the body cooled. In a small chamber overlooking the Tiber, Cesare Borgia, the Pope's son, stood gazing at the city below. He was young, striking, and cruel in a way that only men born to power could be. Behind him, Rodrigo's voice echoed softly, deliberate as always. "A necessary lesson," he said. "Fear unites faster than loyalty." Cesare turned, his jaw tightening. "And yet," he replied, "too much fear breeds rebellion." Rodrigo smiled faintly. "Then let them fear us just enough." Beyond the Vatican, Rome's nobles were restless. Invitations from the Borgias had become both a privilege and a curse. Some burned the letters before opening them. Others sent sickly excuses or begged for leave to travel. Yet still, most came, because to refuse was to disappear. And in a city built on secrets, vanishing quietly was often worse than dying publicly. That evening, while the bells of St. Peter's tolled for Orsini's funeral, Cesare wandered into the gardens. The scent of orange blossoms mingled with the faint tang of something metallic, mercury, perhaps, or arsenic. The papal apothecary was at work nearby, stirring his mixtures in silence. Bottles glimmered like jewels on the shelf. Aquafortis belladonna, powdered coral. Death had become chemistry, and Rome its laboratory. Cesare watched as the apothecary lifted a vial toward the light. The liquid shimmered faintly blue. "A new formula, my lord," the old man said softly, swift but without pain. Cesare's lips curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. "Without pain," he murmured. "Then where's the lesson?" In the distance, a bell tolled again, one long, mournful note that seemed to linger in the air. Inside the papal chambers, Rodrigo Borgia dined alone, a single goblet before him. He drank slowly, savoring the silence. The feast was over, but its shadow had only begun to stretch. From that night forward, no banquet in Rome would be innocent. Every clink of a cup was a test of trust. Every taste of wine, a flirtation with death. Florence, 1503. The city was a masterpiece. Marble domes glowing beneath the Tuscan sun, the scent of lilies floating through the Arno's breeze, and laughter echoing from courtyards painted with angels. Yet beneath that beauty lurked a silence that chilled the soul. Here, elegance was a mask. Refinement hid cruelty, and poison had become an art form. In the heart of the city stood the Palazzo Medici, a palace of splendor and suspicion. Within its candlelit halls, Caterina de' Medici was learning what few women of her time dared to study: the science of survival. Her tutors spoke of etiquette and lineage, but her true lessons came from the apothecaries who served her family. She watched them grind herbs into dust, distill venom into perfume, and transform ordinary powders into weapons invisible to sight or scent. "Every fragrance," her nurse once whispered, "can be both comfort and curse." And Caterina never forgot. When she was married off to the French royal house, she carried Florence within her, not its art but its secrets. Tiny vials, crafted by Florentine glassmakers, nestled among her jewels. Their contents were disguised as oils, perfumes, and love potions. She smiled at courtiers with the grace of a queen, but behind that smile lay centuries of knowledge passed through whispers and locked doors. In Florence itself, the fashion of death spread as swiftly as the scent of jasmine. The city's noble women learned to paint with powders laced in trace toxins, to scent their gloves with lethal oils, and slip a single drop into a rival's goblet. Poison was no longer the weapon of men. It had become the voice of women silenced by power, and their revenge sang sweetly in the air. One night, during a masquerade at the Palazzo, a count collapsed while dancing. His face flushed, his breath short, his words lost in confusion. The music never stopped. The guests simply stepped around him, their laughter trembling as they pretended not to see. The hostess smiled faintly and raised her fan, releasing a perfume so intoxicating that even grief forgot its name. In Florence, death had become fashionable, and in every perfumed breath, the city exhaled both beauty and betrayal. The next morning, Florence awoke to rumors whispered behind latticed windows. The Count's sudden collapse was the talk of every salon, every courtyard, every gilded hallway. No one dared speak his name openly, yet every eye knew. The city had claimed another victim of the invisible art. The scent of lilies still lingered in the air, but beneath it, a subtle metallic tang hinted at what lay beneath the elegance. Death had become perfumed, and no one was safe. Caterina, now more cautious than ever, moved the court with the precision of a hunter. Every gesture, every glance, every breath she took was calculated. A brush of lace against a hand could deliver a fatal dose. A whispered word could seal a fate. She studied her companions closely. The flirtatious lady-in-waiting, the ambitious duchess, the scholar whose curiosity often led him too close to truth. She knew that trust was a luxury, and even the most loyal servant could be a vessel for death if persuaded or coerced. The palace itself seemed complicit in the dark arts it harbored. In dimly lit corridors, bottles glimmered faintly like trapped stars. Some contained the harmless oils of roses and saffron. Others held the lethal promise of belladonna, hemlock, or nightshade. Servants whispered each other about the proper mixing of tinctures, the subtlety of administration, and the patience required to see the poison take its course. In Florence, mastery over life and death was as much a domestic duty as sweeping floors or arranging flowers. And yet, amidst the fear, there was beauty, an unsettling combination that fascinated and horrified. Guests wore perfumes that masked the faintest hint of powder, their laughter bright as sunlight against velvet walls. They danced, dined, and drank, unaware that the very fragrances that delighted their senses might also be their undoing. It was a world where elegance concealed menace, where charm could kill as surely as a blade. By nightfall, another noble had quietly passed, and the courtiers' whispers grew sharper, tinged with terror. Yet the city moved on, as cities do, brushing aside death as if it were merely another season. In the shadows, Caterina prepared herself for the next masquerade, the next ball, the next lesson in perfumed death that ruled her world. Every smile, every scent, every delicate gesture carried a weight unseen, the silent, lethal language of power. Venice, 1515. The city shimmered like a jewel reflected in black water, canals winding through palaces where gondolas glided silently beneath moonlight. The scent of salt and damp would mingle with exotic spices from distant ports, carrying the promise of wealth, indulgence, and indulgence's darker twin, decay. Here, among masked revelers and silk-clad merchants, the poison banquet reached its most decadent expression. In the Palazzo Lorenzo di Rossi, a feast was prepared for diplomats from Naples, Milan, and the French court. The table groaned under the weight of roasted boar, candied figs, and wine deep as garnet. Candles flickered in crystal holders, casting shadows that danced like specters across the frescoed walls. Musicians played soft melodies, their notes curling through the air like smoke, while servants moved with ghostly precision, their hands careful not to betray the secrets hidden in chalices and platters. Among the guests, Duke Ferrante of Naples smiled, unaware that his next sip might be his last. Lorenzo, seated at the head of the table, watched each expression with hawk-like scrutiny. His smile was polite, but his mind was calculating. A pinch of nightshade in the Duke's wine, a trace of hemlock in the roasted pheasant for a rival noble. Every course a choice, every flavor a potential execution. The guests were actors in the theater of sin, their indulgence the playwright's design. The pleasure of the feast was intoxicating, yet carried a taste of terror, subtle but unmistakable. The first signs were never immediate. A slight pallor, a cough, a trembling hand. Only later would the true horror reveal itself. Burning throats, nausea that twisted the stomach, and finally the slow, inescapable tightening of life's final thread. To dine in Venice's palaces was to flirt with mortality, to taste sin in its most exquisite form. Outside, the canals whispered to each other under the moon, a quiet murmur that seemed to echo the secrets of the city. Venice, proud and decadent, thrived on appearances. Its beauty concealed its rot, its splendor masked fear. And within every gilded room, every opulent hall, the poison banquet reminded all who partook that indulgence and death were lovers in disguise. By midnight, the palazzo had fallen into a surreal stillness. Some guests whispered prayers, clutching their stomachs, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Others, unaware of the invisible threat coursing through their veins, continued to laugh, raising goblets as if defying fate itself. The air was thick with incense and fear, the sweet perfume of candied fruits masking the acrid tang of death. Lorenzo watched quietly, a shadow among flickering candlelight. His hand rested lightly on a crystal decanter, though he had long since mastered the subtle art of removing suspicion from himself. The servants moved like ghosts, silent and precise, their faces expressionless, their loyalty measured in secrecy and survival. A single misstep, a dropped napkin, a clink of silver, could shatter the illusion of civility and invite chaos. And yet, no one dared question the order of the feast. Fear, once sown, had become a seasoning in itself. The first victims fell in silence, convulsing quietly at the far end of the hall. Their cries were muffled by laughter and music, as if the city itself conspired to hide the horror. Candles flickered against frescoed ceilings, casting grotesque shadows over painted cherubs that seemed to mock the suffering below. Every bite, every sip had become a gamble. Every smile, a thin mask over the inevitability of death. The Venetian elite had learned that indulgence was both pleasure and peril, that to taste sin was to taste mortality itself. And yet, even in the midst of suffering, there was a perverse beauty. The orchestration of life and death, the careful dance between poison and palate, revealed a truth about Venice that few dare to speak. Power demanded cunning, and survival required cruelty. Those who left the banquet lived changed, their senses sharpened, their trust broken, their understanding of human ambition forever darkened. As dawn crept to the tall windows, the city outside continued its rhythm of commerce and devotion, oblivious of the horrors concealed in its palaces. Inside, the poisoned banquet had ended, leaving behind a tableau of shattered faces, empty goblets, and a lingering scent of fear. And Venice, eternal in its beauty, smiled coldly in the sunlight, its secret safe once more, waiting for the next feast. Beyond the gilded halls and massed ballrooms of Italy, a hidden world thrived, one invisible to nobles and diplomats, yet essential to the deadly elegance of their courts. It was the empire of poisoners, where loyalty was measured in secrecy and skill, and life could be purchased or destroyed with a single vial. Here, in shadowed workshops and narrow alleyways, apothecaries, alchemists, and cunning servants practiced their craft with reverence reserved for the divine. In Bologna, a city known for its scholars, an elderly alchemist named Giovanni Sartori hunched over a desk cluttered with flasks, powders, and dried herbs. He whispered to himself as he measured each substance with exacting care. Belladonna, aconite, hemlock, every grain mattered. The difference between death and survival was measured in milligrams. Sartori's hands, though trembling with age, were steady in their purpose. For decades he had supplied courts from Florence to Rome, Venice to Naples, transforming mundane ingredients into instruments of silent justice. The empire of poison was not merely about murder. It was about power, influence, and invisible threads that bound the Italian city-states together. Courtiers commissioned formulas under the guise of perfumes, elixirs, or remedies. A concubine might request a tincture for a rival, a duca powder to quiet a troublesome advisor. The poisons were meticulous, designed to mimic natural illness or accident, leaving no suspicion, no trace, a ghost of mortality that haunted even the most careful observers. Giovanni's apprentice, a boy no older than 15, watched intently as the alchemist dissolved powders into wine-colored liquids. "Will they know?" the boy asked, his voice quivering. Sartori's eyes glimmered in the candlelight. "They will not," he said softly. "Death, my child, is an art. It is beauty and terror entwined. Only the ignorant fear the hand that prepares it. The wise understand that it is merely the truth of power laid bare." Outside, the streets of Bologna seemed ordinary, sun glinting off red-tile roofs, merchants shouting their wares. Yet beneath the normalcy, the empire of poisoners pulsed like a hidden river, moving silently from palace to palazzo, from apothecary to noble hand. In the age of Renaissance Italy, the true power was not in armies or gold. It was in the knowledge of the lethal and unseen. By nightfall, the workshops of Italy seemed almost alive, their flickering lanterns casting trembling shadows on walls lined with vials and manuscripts. In Florence, another alchemist, Lorenzo di Banchi, carefully labeled a row of tiny bottles, each containing a subtle, invisible death. He hummed softly as he worked, the tune familiar, comforting, yet almost eerie in its cadence. Each poison had its signature. Some acted slowly, leaving a victim to writhe in quiet agony. Others struck swiftly, leaving only the illusion of natural collapse. Lorenzo knew that his craft was not merely chemical, but psychological. The terror that came before the body fell as part of the art. Across the peninsula, courtiers consulted these artisans with the precision of generals planning a campaign. They discussed doses, as if discussing gold coins, the timing of administration, as if orchestrating a symphony. Servants were trained in subtlety. A dropped handkerchief, a scented glove, a silver cup handled with practiced care. Every detail mattered, for in this clandestine network, a single error could expose both master and messenger to ruin. Death was invisible, but betrayal was fatal. The empire of poisoners extended beyond Italy, its influence spilling into France, Spain, and the courts of the Holy Roman Empire. Letters carried secret recipes. Travelers smuggled powders in ornate jewelry, and the knowledge passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. It was a trade steeped in secrecy, reward, and terror. Some called it criminal, others necessary, a means of survival in a world where swords could be parried, but wine could not. In Bologna, Giovanni Sartori paused, inhaling the faint aroma of his latest concoction. It smelled of almonds and violets, deceptively sweet, yet capable of ending a life within hours. He thought of his apprentice, now quietly observing, and realized the boy would carry this knowledge into a world unprepared for its weight. The empire of poisoners was eternal, and those who wielded it were both revered and feared. Beyond the workshops, behind palace doors, and beneath masked smiles, Italy's elite continued to dine, unaware that every bite, every sip, was a lesson in mortality, and that the true architects of these feasts were the shadowed hands who moved silently between power and death. The centuries passed, but the shadow of the poisoned banquet lingered like a stain on Europe's memory. From the candlelit halls of Renaissance Italy to the gilded courts of France and Spain, stories of vanished nobles, trembling concubines, and silent deaths traveled faster than armies. The art of poison became legend, whispered in the corridors of power, immortalized in chronicles that trembled between history and rumor. It was a legacy of fear, elegance, and death intertwined, shaping the way rulers viewed loyalty and ambition. In Rome, the descendants of the Borgias maintained their influence, yet the memory of their feasts lingered longer than any political triumph. Courtiers recalled how wine had turned red not with victory, but with betrayal. In Florence, Caterina da Medici's perfumes carried both beauty and menace across the Alps, her knowledge of poisons transforming the French court into a theater of subtle terror. Wherever nobility gathered, the lesson remained. Trust was fragile, indulgence was perilous, and the tiniest touch of a hidden hand could seal a fate forever. Writers, playwrights, and chroniclers amplified these stories, embellishing the horrors with each retelling. Venice's masked balls, Milan's feasts, and Rome's palaces became stages for legend. Children of wealthy families were warned against gluttony and curiosity alike. A misplaced sip or a careless compliment could be fatal. The poison banquet had transcended mere practice. It had become a symbol of power's fragility, a warning that beauty could conceal decay, and that civility often hid cruelty. Yet, beyond fear, there was fascination. The idea of death delivered with elegance, a betrayal cloaked in celebration, captivated minds across Europe. Scholars studied apothecaries' formulas. Poets mused over hidden vials, and alchemists pursued the secret arts of subtle killing. Even centuries later, the poison legacy shaped diplomacy, etiquette, and courtly intrigue. It was a testament to the seductive and terrible duality of human ambition, that the desire to survive, to dominate, or to punish could be woven into the very fabric of society. By the late 17th century, the poison banquet had passed from necessity to ritualized fear. In courts across Europe, noble houses spoke in hushed tones of the infamous Italian families who had first mastered the deadly art. Their names, Borgia, Medicis, Sforzas, carried weight far beyond their territories, invoking both awe and terror. The poisoner was no longer merely a servant or apothecary. He was a strategist, a silent general in wars waged beneath the veneer of civility. In France, Catherine de Medici's influence endured long after her death. Her methods, whispered among ladies of the court, became part of the subtle choreography of power. Gloves brushed against delicate wrists, perfumes perfumed with hidden toxins, and cups raised to toast alliances all echoed lessons from Florence. Beauty and death were inseparable, and survival demanded cunning that rivaled kings. Tales of courtly intrigues, sudden deaths, and secret antidotes became the backbone of diplomacy. A poison cup was no mere rumor. It was a threat, a promise, and a lesson all at once. Even outside the courts, the poison legacy seeped into culture. Writers chronicled the horrors, dramatizing the elegance of death. Painters depicted banquets where terror lurked behind the gold plates, and the public, fascinated and horrified, carried these stories into taverns, markets, and parlors. The poison banquet became a symbol of the human condition itself. The mingling of desire and danger, pleasure and pain, ambition and mortality. It reminded every listener and reader that history is often written not in grand battles, but in silent acts of cunning, where a life could be ended without a scream. By the 18th century, the legends had hardened into cautionary truths. Royalty consulted alchemists and apothecaries not merely for remedies, but to safeguard themselves against the invisible threats that lurked within their gilded halls. The poison legacy had endured, a testament to the power of subtlety, fear, and intellect in shaping history. From Renaissance Italy to every corner of Europe, the lessons of those feasts remain clear. Power is never innocent. Elegance masks danger, and the legacy of the poisoned table is eternal. This was the final echo of an era where celebration became massacre, where every sip carried a choice, and where humanity's fascination with mortality met the artistry of cruelty.